He didn't scream. He didn't cry. He just stood there as Officer Doyle struck him, open palm, full force, across the face. In front of the judge. In front of the gallery. In front of the law that claimed to protect him, 16 years old. Brown-skinned. Cuffed at the wrists like a criminal. The courtroom didn't gasp. They froze. Not from surprise, but from confusion. Was this allowed? Was this normal? The judge said nothing. The bailiff shifted but didn't move. The boy simply blinked, wiped blood from his lip with the back of his hand, and stared toward the door. That's when the man entered. He wore a navy suit. No tie. No badge. No fanfare. But his presence cracked the room open like thunder. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He was Marcus Carter. And from that moment, everything changed. Jan Carter, the boy, didn't look at his father. He didn't smile or flinch. He just sat down slowly, almost deliberately. Every movement measured. Every breath controlled. I said recess. Judge Simons barked, but it sounded more like a retreat than a command. As the room emptied into murmurs and huddled whispers, the court-appointed defender, Nina Ford, approached the defense table. She was in her early 30s, worn heels, a leather bag full of highlighters and dashed hopes. But today felt different. Something about the boy. Something about that man in the back. She knelt beside him. "I'm Nina. I'm here to represent you." Jan didn't answer at first. His eyes were fixed on the papers scattered across the floor where his belongings had just been dumped and rifled through. Finally, he spoke. "They'll do it again. I still need your name," she said gently. He turned slowly. "Jane Carter." Her pen stopped mid-page. The surname hit differently. She looked at him again, more carefully now. He wasn't scared. He wasn't confused. He wasn't angry either, but he was still. Then she saw it, a silver chain around his neck, partly hidden under his shirt collar. A tag glinted briefly as he shifted. Carter Field Office, FBI. Her eyebrows raised slightly, but she didn't say a word. She didn't have to. He saw her look. "I'm not hiding," Jan said. "Just tired of explaining." Nina nodded, understanding more than he knew. This wasn't a defense case. This was a setup. Doyle strutted back into the courtroom after recess like he'd just won a war. He handed a folded paper to the judge and said, "We're adding resisting arrest. Obstruction." He got aggressive during transport. Judge Simons didn't ask for proof. He didn't even look at Jan. He just nodded and said, "Charges noted." No questions. No doubt. Just more weight thrown onto a boy already buried. Then came the backpack. 2 uniformed officers returned and said they were conducting a routine search. They dumped Jan's things onto the floor like it was garbage. Notebooks, pens, a sandwich, torn foil, scattered pieces of a young man's life. Nina jumped up. "He's not being charged with possession. This is illegal." One officer, smug and slow, said, "You can file a complaint later." Jan didn't react. He gathered his things again with the care of someone who'd had to do this before, like he'd learned the choreography. Then, as they walked away, the younger officer smirked and said loudly, "Look at him. Not a student. A future inmate." That line hung in the air. Sharp, cold, unapologetic. Jan zipped his bag. Silent. But Nina's face changed. When she stood again, she held a USB drive. "Your Honor, I have footage. It was submitted by a civilian. It shows the events at Darrow and 5th, what really happened before the arrest." She handed it to the clerk, who plugged it in. The courtroom held its breath. The video flickered to life. Grainy, but clear enough. Jan, standing between Doyle and an elderly black man with a cane. The old man looked afraid. Doyle shoved him. Jan didn't attack. He shielded. No violence. Just protection. The room leaned forward, but Judge Simons leaned back. Unverified. Footage dismissed. No deliberation. No further comment. Just a decision. And just like that, the truth was thrown out like that sandwich. Jan didn't protest. He didn't even lift his eyes. Instead, he slid a folded piece of paper across the table to Nina. She opened it. A single line. "Watch. Don't act. Not yet." Then she noticed his watch. Plain black band. Simple face. But she recognized it. Bureau issued for family of agents and hostile assignments. .1 tap. Sends a location. 2 taps. She looked at him, but he didn't meet her eyes. He just leaned back. Somewhere in the gallery, Marcus Carter sat motionless, watching, still waiting. Something was coming. And Jan? He was ready. But this courtroom had no idea what was about to happen next. He leaned on the railing with that familiar smirk, the kind born of power. The video had been dismissed, the truth buried, and the boy still sitting there, silent, cuffed, still. So Officer Doyle did what men like him do when they believe they've won. He taunted. "No one's here to save you, boy." He didn't need to raise his voice. The judge stayed silent. The bailiff shifted but didn't move. The whole room choked on submission, until one chair scraped softly in the back. It wasn't loud. But in that courtroom silence, it thundered that a man stood. No tie, white shirt under a tailored jacket. He walked with quiet confidence down the aisle. No rush. Just wait. Jan didn't move. Didn't blink. He knew. He had known. The man stopped at the bar and spoke 2 words, low and even. "I am." Everyone leaned forward. Doyle flinched, until the man reached into his coat and produced a badge case. He opened it. The gold flashed under the courtroom lights. Marcus Carter, Assistant Director, Federal Bureau of Investigation. Gasps fluttered through the gallery. One juror leaned forward. A reporter dropped her pen. The judge stayed still. "Doyle?" His smirk collapsed. Marcus turned to Judge Simons. "You silenced my son," he said evenly. "Now, you'll hear the sound of accountability." Jan lifted his head slightly. Still cuffed. Still calm. But behind that calm, Nina saw it. Something rising. "Hope." "Your Honor," Marcus said, "I formally request an evidentiary hearing." Judge Simons narrowed his eyes. "On what grounds?" "Prosecutorial misconduct, judicial bias, and falsified testimony by Officer Doyle." Nina stood. "Your Honor, we're submitting verified footage, authenticated by the FBI. It shows Jan Carter intervening to stop excessive force on an unarmed civilian." The courtroom screen came to life. Same video, now watermarked and time-stamped, with chain of custody proof. This time, no one could look away. When it ended, Marcus stepped forward. "We're also submitting internal affairs records, 3 previous complaints against Officer Doyle, all dismissed by this court." He handed a thick folder to the clerk. The judge glanced at it and paled. "This is now a federal inquiry," Marcus said. "Officer Doyle, you're under arrest for obstruction of justice, abuse of power, and falsification of records." The room froze. 2 federal agents entered. Doyle's mouth opened. No words came. They cuffed him, right there in front of the boy he thought couldn't fight back. Phones came out instantly. The footage hit social media like wildfire. Hashtag Justice for Jan. Hashtag Watch the Courtroom Fall. Hashtag Silence as Power TikToks spun dramatic edits. News anchors ran the clip. Twitter flooded with outrage. A quiet resistance turned national. Marcus didn't flinch. He turned to his son, finally, and nodded. Jan met his eyes and smiled. Not pride, not triumph, relief. Judge Simons tried to speak, but the words dried up. The gavel in his hand felt like a toy. His legacy unraveled before the world's eyes. An elderly black woman stood. She had watched the entire trial without a word. As Doyle was let out, she whispered about time. No one silenced her. Outside, the steps were a storm. Press, protesters, cameras. Jan walked beside his father. No cuffs, no fear, just dignity. The crowd erupted, but he didn't stop, didn't wave. He just walked. Nina caught up. "You okay?" she asked. Jan paused. "Not yet, but close." Behind them, the crowd chanted his name. Signs rose. He didn't break. He watched. We listened. That evening, the Department of Justice launched a full investigation into Judge Simons' rulings. The Attorney General condemned the abuse of power, but Marcus didn't care for headlines. His eyes were only on his son. "You knew this would happen," he said. As they reached the car, Jan looked out across the crowd. "Not this exactly. Just that silence doesn't mean defeat." Marcus smiled faintly. "You were never silent. You were waiting." Jan nodded, and watching. As the car pulled away, a final headline rolled across the news ticker. Teen silent stands sparks National Court Reform Inquiry. Jayan leaned his head against the window, not to rest, but to remember. The world had finally heard what he never needed to say aloud.